What's up, guys? It's Simon from Lake Hub. Today we're talking about buying a used pop-up camper. I'm going to show you exactly the methods that I use, my priorities for inspecting a used pop-up camper. I have my second camper now. That we're on our second camper. Bought and sold our first one, bought our second one, and we're actually on the market for our third. My very first camper was a total fixer-upper. We completely raised and removed the roof, removed the air conditioner, completely rebuilt the roof. And so I know what a roof looks like on the inside, and this was an aluminum skin roof that we did, just like this one right here. So I've got a lot of experience with what's going on inside of a pop-up camper, a lot of repairs that we've done, and I'm going to share with you a couple tips too, especially one, hang around to the end because I've got one tip for how to upgrade your pop-up camper for free. All right, the first spot to look is the roof. So there are three types of roofing materials that I've seen in pop-up campers. You're going to have aluminum skin like this. This is a single sheet because it's a small box. This is a small camper. Otherwise, there would be a seam right here in the middle, and it'd be made from two sheets of aluminum, and then they wrap over the end boards like this. And that's pretty good material. There's also fiberglass. Those tend to be like just flat sheets and a little more of a boxy construction, and so you'll have a trim piece right here. It's just more, the trim is a place to fail. So more trim, more places to fail. Then the third style, I see this a lot on used Coleman campers. Coleman brand is ABS plastic, and those are going to be no trim. It's going to be like all smooth corners. It looks really rounded. And those are fine until they start to crack, and they almost always start to crack in the corners. In fact, no matter what material it is, the corners end up being the first place to get compromised. So you see we have like all this aluminum trim right here, and then we have plastic corner caps. You can get replacement caps. You can get these online. You can get these on Amazon or Camping World. You can also get them direct from the factory replacements. There's boards joined underneath the skin, underneath the aluminum skin. There's boards joined with a bracket. You can see that once you pop it up a little bit and stick your head behind. And then it's just, puttied up like crazy with waterproof putty, and then caulked, kind of around the outside, or it's on the inside, but around the outside of the joint, it's caulked up, and then the cap is placed on top and screwed in. If this cap has been cracked, if the seal has cracked at any point in time and then rain gotten in, then that's a place for water to get into the end boards and start to rot from the inside out. That's a problem area. That means you need to start to take the roof apart and repair it. I've done that job. It is a total headache. Don't do that job. If it's got fresh caulk, that means that it's been well cared for, and that kind of sets your mind at ease a little bit. If everything is sealed up and tight, no cracks or gaps. You can see this one. It's caulked, clear caulk, but it's like right on top of the old stuff. So the best method is to cut and peel off the old stuff, like what's been done right here, and then completely fresh recaulk it. So you would just want to inspect the trim all the way around and make sure that it's fresh trim and that nothing has been left unsealed for any amount of time. You'll want to look at the AC unit. This one's nice and flat. If you look at it from the side, you can see that there's no sagging or bowing. So that's good. That tells me that the frame has remained dry since day one. And then look for any pock marks, holes that have been patched up from hail. If this thing's been in a hailstorm, then it's just going to be trouble. It's going to be trouble. It's going to be never-ending trouble. You're always going to be patching holes. So keep that in mind. If you see any holes patched on the top, that means hail, and that means that you're just going to be chasing those forever. So that might be a deal breaker for you, but that's where you start. You always start at the roof before it's popped up. So we have the lift system here. Make sure that you're leveled on all four corners before you start lifting up. Otherwise, one corner is going to do a lot more work than it has to. And there's not a lot to it. It's a cable pulley, winch type of system. And it works until the cable breaks. If the cable breaks, then you've got some bad news, but otherwise they'll last a really long time. So what you want to do is just put eyeballs on the cable itself, check for any fraying. If there's fraying, then that's bad news. That means it hasn't been maintained and it's wearing out. So that could give you some trouble. Actually touch it. If it's greased up, then that means it's been well maintained, or it's just not that used. You know, if it's been straight from the factory to a garage, then that might be the case too. So if it's greased up, then that also means it's going to be a quieter open, because from time to time, as it's spooling up on the winch, it'll double up. The cable will double up on itself, and then it'll shift over and settle back in. So you might hear a loud like pop coming right from here when you're cranking up or down. Usually when you're cranking up, if that happens, that's normal. That's totally normal. But if it's a super loud one, it sounds just bad. It sounds really, really bad. But just know that if it's greased up well, then that tends to happen a little bit less. Have it up a couple feet. You have enough room to be able to kind of stick your head up inside here and take a look. Stop and do that. Inspect the end boards. These boards right here will run the length of each end, if that's the way it's built. At least for aluminum and fiberglass, that's going to be the case. And then you'll be able to get a visual inspection of the corner. That is nice and dry, no rot. That looks beautiful. So this tells me there hasn't been any damage into the corner, which is good. So put eyeballs on each corner from the inside, and that'll tell you the true history of what's been going on here. And if that looks like it's been replaced, well, that's some more questions to ask. You can also see that there's been kind of a mess here in the top of the canvas. This is super common. This is very common in old campers because of this seal. So once this seal starts to get hard like it is right now, this is called the bulb seal. You can replace this. You contact the factory and they sell it to you by the foot. And it's kind of a pain to replace, but that's a good move every now and then so that you can prevent this. But this really is not. When I get to talking about canvas, I'll talk about mildew, and this is not what I'm talking about. This is pretty darn normal. This is just from sitting and moisture getting underneath this seal, say on the road. The front one usually looks worse than the back one too. That tip about checking the corners from the inside, you're not gonna hear that anywhere else. Right here, Leg Hub, that's the kind of info you get. Give me a little one of these. Simon wants a likey. All right, once everything's popped up, you're going to be inspecting the canvas. That's the next thing. You're going to be looking for three things. You're going to be looking for perforations, like holes or rips, tears. You're going to be looking for stains, and you're going to be looking for mildew. Mildew is an indication that it was packed down when it was wet. And if there's mildew on the canvas, then there's probably mildew, up inside the edges of the ceiling, and could be other problems going on. It could be, in the furniture and all other kinds of stuff. That's an indication of other nasty things that you're gonna have to deal with, possibly. Rips and holes there are patch kits. There's like tape and patch kits and stuff. If they're small, not a big deal. Patch them up and it'll hold. I've had to do that before. If they're big and it's like a catastrophic perforation, then you really want to rethink this, because this is an 8-foot box. This canvas starts at $1,200 used, and that's a factory replacement. And I wouldn't go any other way on replacing the canvas on a pop-up. So $1,200 on up from there. So you could be in for a couple $1,000s if you're looking at a bigger pop-up camper and replacing the canvas. It's a job. I mean, it's for a do-it-yourselfer, it's not terrible, but you just have to work slow and careful, and there's about 1 million screws holding this thing together. So if you see stains on the canvas, that's indication that there has been a water leak in the past when it was packed down. So if it's not leaking anymore, then it's been repaired, and that could be a weak spot. So any stains at all, for me personally, that's a deal breaker. I'm out. I don't need any more projects in my life. I've done that before. But if you're up for it, just know that if you see stains on the canvas, that means there has been a leak before in the ceiling. So something to look for and something to be very, very wary of. All right, once everything's popped up and you're inside, now you can start pushing around on the ceiling. Check check the entire ceiling. One place is around the air conditioner. So even if you didn't notice any sagging from the outside, you'll still want to push around it. This is going to be framed in. There'll be 2 cross members going all the way across the roof this way, and then 2 short support pieces right here, a 14-inch opening. And sometimes if you could, what's the best way? The best way to check the air conditioner and check the ceiling around the air conditioner is to take this panel off, and then you'll be able to see and reach up in there, because sometimes the gasket, the gasket's universal and it starts really fat and it gets compressed down with the weight. And if it's done unevenly, sometimes it just takes a little bit to settle in and needs to be readjusted. The condensate from the roof in the air conditioner is just like dumping condensate onto the roof, and then it spills off. It could spill back inside. So it's possible to have, a little bit of water damage around this frame. But honestly, if it's like this is really solid. There aren't any soft spots at all. It's not giving at all. And so this is a pretty good ceiling, you can tell from the inside. Also the corners, make sure you're checking the corners. Again, those are going to be the weak spots, right? Around the air conditioner, and then around the corners. So you're pushing on that, you're pushing. If there's any spot that gives at all anywhere, it's time to investigate. Okay, same thing with the floor. So same thing with the floor. You're going to be going into the corners, into the cabinets, right? The corners are all going to be cabinets of some type, because that's actually part of the structure of the body. The cabinets hold the walls up on a pop-up camper. So all the corners are always going to be inside of some type of cabinet or something. So get in there, push down on the corners, and make sure that there aren't any soft spots. Of course, you can kind of walk back and forth too, but it's from my experience, it's been pretty rare that there's like a soft spot right in the middle of the floor, and that's just not really where the damage comes from. It's always going to come from the edges. It's going to be water leaking into the edges of the floor and then rotting it from there. So ceiling and floor. So you want to make sure that you're going to be testing all the appliances too. That's going to be gas and electric both. For instance, the air conditioner. For my money, that's the most important one. Now, even that's not a deal breaker if it works not very well. But even the old ones work really well. But let's say it just doesn't work very well. It doesn't get very cold. Well, there's like 4 bolts that are holding it. You take a couple screws out to get this whole control plate off, and there's 4 bolts holding it on inside of the opening of the roof. It's universal. It's like a 14-inch hole, and they're all the same. They sit on top and just sandwich. And so they're really easy to replace, and they're available all over the place. They're like $350 brand new, so keep that in mind if you need to bring the price of the camper down to accommodate for a new air conditioner. You can also keep in mind that you can find them for, at least in my area, for about $150 used. So there's pop-ups have a tendency to get trashed when they're left alone, but the air conditioning will still be good. So people will part them out, and you can find one. They're really not that hard to replace. Little elbow grease goes a long way. So other accessories and appliances you might want to try are the water, although I will also tell you that they're not great. They're just, camper sinks are just not amazing, and pop-ups are like the cheapest campers, right? So in our case, we don't have hot water in this camper. We've got one handle for the tank. There's a tank that we can fill up, and then one handle for city water, so pressurized city water that we can hook up straight, with a hose from a spigot straight into the camper, and then use that. And the drain, it just goes straight outside. So we have a hose we hook up for that. If we're in an area where draining is not okay, then you need like a gray water container. The appliances in a pop-up are not that amazing. Okay, I'm gonna be real. They suck. They're not useful. We totally live out of a cooler. This little fridge right here, on paper, this little fridge is great. It's full of stuff right now because that's about as useful as it is. It's a traveling storage unit. It's a cabinet because it's so bad at keeping food cold. This is like barely a drink cooler. I don't even know if it's worthy of putting beer in. This is more like a Gatorade cooler or a high C cooler. It runs on propane, it runs on battery, it runs on 110, but it doesn't matter. No matter what's powering it, it just doesn't get that cold. It's not made to get that cold. It's a little tiny little camper fridge, right? It's not even a dorm fridge. It's a little camper fridge. So there's a couple gas appliances in here too. There's a propane stove that hooks up to the outside, right outside the door here. Some campers are big enough to have a stove on the inside, but that kind of freaks me out. I mean, you're cooking inside of a tent. You just keep that in mind. Like this is not a hard-walled camper. There's like going to be grease popping up on your curtains and stuff. I don't know. That's not a great situation. I like cooking outside, even if the weather's bad. Pop up a tent, like a canopy tent type of deal, and cook underneath that. We do have the stove that goes outside, and it's okay. It works fine. It's convenient. It goes under the awning, so there's plenty of draft back and forth, and the heat doesn't get all the way up to the awning. It's just the burners are small, so you can really only fit one thing at a time on there, so it's semi-useful. This one has a propane furnace down below here, and we only use that like in case of emergency. If it's like super cold, then we'll use that. Otherwise, if we have electric, we have a little tiny space heater, like the smallest space heater that they make, fills this space up really well. Our old camper had an electric furnace up here, and that was nice because it really doesn't take a lot of heat. It was like this really low wattage coil and a fan, and it was pretty simple. At first it doesn't feel like there's any heat coming out, but then after running it for an hour, it fills the space and then just keeps it cool, or keeps it warm all night. We also have a nice exhaust fan, which can be good for kind of circulating the air. That runs off electric. Test all the lights, and if there are any problems, I'll tell you. Almost all this stuff is pretty easily replaceable. The fridge is pretty hard to replace, and anything gas is more difficult to replace than the electric stuff. The light fixtures and things like that, I mean, you can get those on Amazon. You can get those at Camping World, all over the place. Sometimes even like rural Walmarts will have those. Northern Tool. So a lot of that stuff, all the widgets and stuff like that, are pretty easily replaceable with a couple screws and unplug and replug, or quick twist of a couple wires. So test all the electrical. All right, here's the gear that I want you to bring with you when you're checking out a used pop-up camper that you want to buy. First and foremost, really important, is this converter. These are inexpensive. This is a worthy insurance policy for you, because I've checked out pop-ups before. We didn't have this, and we couldn't plug in because the cord couldn't reach, like the dry room. This is like a 30 amp or a dedicated circuit if it was inside your house type of deal. So to a regular Edison plug converter, take that with you, so there are no excuses for hooking up. Also, just for a little extra insurance, extension cord. If you bring those two things, you make sure to meet the owner at their house, not like some neutral location. Normally, buying used stuff, it's a little bit safer to meet in a public space, but in this case, wherever you meet, make sure that there's power, and to guarantee that, just meet them at their house. And if you bring these two things, for sure that your destiny is in your control. You can hook everything up and test the appliances. The other two things are a headlamp and a flashlight. Both. You're going to want both, just so that you can crawl underneath and give things a good look around. It might be dark when you pop things up, depending on the type of weather that day. If it's super cloudy or whatever, until you have it hooked up, you're going to want some extra light. So those are the 4 things to bring with you when you're checking out a pop-up camper. You can look at wheels and bearings too, but I'm going to tell you, for my money, that is really low on my list of priorities. I know other folks, the first thing when you're looking at any sort of trailer is to inspect the wheels and bearings, look at the tires, see if they're expired, drive it around, check the hub and feel if it's hot. That means the bearings haven't been taken care of. But again, for my money, these are cheap and easy, repairs, fixes, maintenance. tires are not that expensive. We're talking about 2 tires here. I've got like highway speed rated, appropriately sized tires, and I think it was like $120 out the door. For peace of mind, I do that when I buy a new camper. I don't care what the date stamp is on the old tires. I don't care what the tread is. I replace them with brand new ones, and then I sell the old ones used for about $20-$30 a piece anyway. So it's a cheap upgrade, and it's definitely worth doing. I also pack my bearings. That's a pretty simple job, and I do that because I put a lot of miles. Like, we're going on road trips, thousands of miles at a time, and I'm not taking any chances. The reason why I'm not as worried about wheels and bearings and suspension and all that kind of stuff is because this stuff, you could completely replace this stuff. I don't know if you have a Northern Tool in your area. We've got Northern Tool. That store has everything you need to replace everything below and forward of the frame. I mean, the entire tongue and jack and everything, leaf springs, axles. I could do all that stuff in my garage, and it's like unbolting and bolting back on. It's really not complicated, and so because of all that, none of this stuff is a deal breaker. I'll take it as it is, no matter what. Maybe I'll use it to negotiate price if they're just completely just trash, dry rotted, in terrible shape. Then I know that that it's worth replacing for $120. But otherwise, not that big of a concern. All right, here's your tactic to upgrade your camper for free. If you have a used camper and you're looking to upgrade with another used camper, but you want to size up, this is what I did. I actually didn't size up, but we got about 10 years newer. Here's how you do it. If you can swing it, you buy your camper in the dead of winter, and you keep 2 campers. If you can swing, if you've got the money, if you've got the space to do it, then sell your camper, your old one, when it gets warm. When it's camping season again, when the trees start to bloom like they are right now, it's warm, it's sunny, it's beautiful, everybody has camping on the mind. In January and February, it's post-Christmas, everybody's spent their money, it's dead cold, nobody's going outside. You're thinking, man, I've got this camper, I've got it in storage, I'm gonna put it on the market, I've been wanting to sell it anyway. That is the time to buy a camper. So we sold the same size, and it was our old fixer-upper camper, got almost 10 years newer, a couple more cool amenities and stuff that we wanted, and it was $100. It was $100 difference with this technique of selling when it's warm and buying when it's super cold. There you go. That's it, everybody. I hope this was helpful to you. Get out there and get camping. Don't miss out on my essential gear for camping video. Talk to you soon.